So this piece was made between 2012 and 2014. It was a continuation of works that I've been making about castings and the body, primarily about this idea of memory in the skin and this idea of casting using plaster. Plaster being probably one of the oldest casting techniques in the world, dating back 4,000 years, right back to the Egyptians, who thought that plaster carried with it, because it was a natural compound, it was able to sort of transmute some kind of energy. When you make castings, plaster heats the skin, and in some way the essence of the body is then transferred into the cast of the plaster. So they used it to make death masks, in the hope that the spirit of the dead person would somehow then be left in the impression of the mask in the face. That would then be passed on to families or some kind of remembrance. And as I was thinking about this kind of material, I started to ask the questions in my own work, was that what kind of transference was I looking for when I was casting parts of different people that I've been doing for many years. And then if skin was somehow had this transmutatable property where you could carry somehow the essence of other people, who would be the body that would have the most experience of other people? It seemed quite normal or natural for me. Then I started to think about this idea of the sex worker. So what you have here are 6 women who I met in the year 2012. They're all over 40, and they are from the largest red light area in Asia called Sonigachi in Calcutta. And I think for me, this work became a piece about ethics, about the body, about the aging female body, about the idea of me as a woman then buying the body of another woman, what that meant. It sort of became this Pandora's box of questions about the role of art and the making of sculpture and the procedure of how I've made my own works. And I think it's I think with this work there's many questions, but I'm not specifically sure if I'll ever be able to make all the answers for myself. My sculptural practice is very wide. I use materials to talk about ideas. For me, the material is not the message. The work is the message and what I do with it, and the complexity of all the ideas and that I have in my practice that have been going on for many years. I think obviously for me the central theme is the sense of the body, the self. And then all the works become investigations of different facets of that kind of ideology. So say the bindi will be about seeing. And the bindi is a metaphor for a type of consciousness. It's a leitmotif. It's a material that I've used, which is a conceptual underpinning of the third eye. So the bindis are really about how do you see, what do you see. They're also activators for the works. So they really are the activators in my studio. So they perform a certain type of function within my works. The sculpture, the castings become they become a catharsis, something that an essence of somebody that I can bring into my practice as a kind of truth that then I can push into another direction. So my work is not about truth, it's not about realities, it's not about women as such, it's not about people as such. It's about the way that materials can become alchemical, about how we can learn about things that we don't know about. Through art you can create images of things that we don't know or we don't experience ourselves perhaps. And so when I work through different materials, like if I work with the bangles, what I'm trying to do with these works is create a metaphorical or a visual connect between a building, because I call these works bloodlines. And so I use these kind of pieces as connectors that start from the bottom of the building to the top. I create a kind of spine in the building, a connection that's kind of visceral as well as human. So it's as much about the body, going back to this idea of the body, and using materials to describe or to create a sense of creating life in a space. It could have been any other material. It's just that this material started to work for me, so I use it. So that piece is, the bangles are melted down. So it's 10 tons of red glass bangles, the same ones that you have there, and they're melted into bricks. So this was a project that went over a period of 12 years, where I sourced a material because I was interested in this part of breaking or melting or destroying an object and turning it into something else. Then the metaphor of the work changes, and then you're able to push in another direction with the way that you push the materials. So as they became bricks, then they started to talk about a density. They're almost like amber, those bricks. They're completely opaque. The red has become black. There's a kind of life in bloodlines. There's a sense of pulsating through the building, whereas the other work is completely the antithesis of that. It feels like a congealing in some ways of where the blood is no longer flowing. It's insinuating a kind of darkness, a dead space. So that piece is called Deaf Room, and it really is the sound where there is no sound of the women who were wearing perhaps those bangles at some stage. It's a kind of muted, muffled, sort of, suffocated sound. So, you can read into the works metaphorically, you can read into the works psychologically, you can look at them visually or just and experience them as works. And I kind of open doors for people with my work, and I allow you to walk in, and I don't necessarily offer you concrete answers to the questions that I'm asking myself.